Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Imagine a sky that is very old and very patient, holding every story it has ever seen the way a tide pool holds the small secrets of the sea. Tonight, the sky opens like a quiet book, and a traveller crosses a page of darkness. It moves with the composure of a thought finally spoken. We give it a name because names help us listen. We trace its path because paths help us remember. And as it glides above, a hush gathers in the fields and on the rooftops, as if the air itself is leaning closer to hear what this wandering messenger might say. Comets have always been storytellers. They arrive with a slow glow at the edge of our sight, like embers that learn to wander, like seeds the universe set free. They are made of dust and ice and the leftovers of beginnings. In their hearts are beads of water so old that the word ancient feels new beside them. Their tails are letters written in light, and as they arc around the sun, they lay shimmering sentences across the night. When a comet is from our own family, a child of our sun, its path seems familiar, like the curve of a well-worn footpath. But sometimes a traveller comes from beyond this family, parting the thin veil between our neighbourhood and the deep, unknown spaces between the stars. Such a visitor does not circle back in a tidy loop. It arrives on a long, open line, as if it remembered another home, far away, and is still faithful to that memory. Astronomers look up with instruments that collect the faintest grains of light. They measure brightness and watch how it changes, because light is the quiet language of distance and motion. If the glow of the traveller brightens too quickly or fades too slowly, questions stir. If jets of gas push it this way or that, if the curve of its journey seems to hesitate or hurry, those questions deepen. Sometimes light is steady like a heartbeat. Sometimes it flickers in puzzles. The human mind is tender toward puzzles. It wants to cradle them and learn their warmth. So we keep looking, keep measuring, because in the careful numbers there might be a whisper of what the traveller carries. A comet is like a suitcase packed long ago. Inside are molecules kissed by cold and time, water, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, small grains of silicate rock, and organics that once slept in nebulae. When sunlight touches such a suitcase, it opens. The ice sighs into gas. Dust rises in a lazy exhale. A tail drifts out like silk pulled by invisible fingers. Scientists point their telescopes and split the light into a rainbow, reading the thin lines that appear like notes on a staff. Those lines tell of gases and temperatures and rhythms older than our languages. They are simple stories in one way, just physics, just chemistry. Yet each simple story carries a deeper kindness. It lets us belong to the same book as the stars. People used to think comets were omens. Now we think of them as archives. Both ideas share a soft truth. Comets arrive with meaning. The meaning is not a warning, it is a patient invitation to wonder. To wonder is to breathe more deeply. To wonder is to make a little space in the mind where fear steps back and curiosity sits down. And when curiosity sits down, it brings with it a warm blanket of questions. The first question is always gentle. Where are you from? The second is tender. What do you hold? The third is brave. Are you like us? Some nights the traveller appears nearly motionless. a bright pin with a halo, while the earth spins new scenery beneath it. On other nights it seems to slide against the dark like a drop of dew along a blade of grass. Our planets turning and our place in orbit are part of the dance. Together they make the Visita's stride look slow, then faster, then slow again. A human child might look up and think it is play. A scientist will look up and think it is data. They are both right. The universe plays. The universe writes numbers. The music and the math share one room. In quiet observatories, clocks tick, and gentle hums of cooling fans make a kind of mechanical lullaby. The telescope opens its eye and drinks photons that have travelled longer than our civilizations have stood. Each photon is a traveller too, carrying the flavour of its source. With enough photons, the flavour becomes a pattern. With enough nights, the pattern becomes a story. If the story fits what we know, we nod and press the pages flat. If it drifts away from what we know, we lean closer and read again. Some travellers are different. They cut through with a speed and angle that say softly but firmly, "I am not bound to return." Their orbits are open, not closed. The shape of their path is a long U that stretches toward the past and then toward the future, both beyond our sunlight's familiar neighbourhoods. We call such orbits hyperbolic, a word that means the curve does not close into a loop. With these visitors, we are certain they are just passing through. They've come from somewhere else, and in time they will go on. The space between stars is not empty in the way an unused room is empty. It is a cool, infield of dust, and whispering atoms and long, quiet distances. A traveller from there wears that quiet like a shawl. People also wonder bigger. Could a traveller be more than ice and dust? Could something that looks like a comet carry an idea made by hands we do not know? It is a question that moves softly at first, then settles in the mind like a small animal sitting down. Science asks it carefully. We look for signs that would stand out, a spin that behaves as if shaped by choice, a reflection that looks like crafted surfaces, a heat that does not match sunlight's touch, a radio hush broken by patterned song. So far, our instruments hear mostly the language of rock and ice and sunlight and gas. But even in that language, there are accents and pauses that make us tilt our heads. When the traveller nears the sun, it changes in ways both steady and surprising. The warmth unlocks pockets of gas. The gas makes tiny jets, and these jets can push the traveller like a set of small hands guiding a leaf across water. The path shifts by amounts you would miss if you blinked, yet to a patient calculation those shifts are plain as footprints in fresh snow. Sometimes the pushes are larger than expected. We look again. Is there more ice than we thought? Are there fractures or hidden vents? The surface turns and catches light in facets, and the brightness pulses, bright, dim, as if the traveller were breathing. A light curve is what we call that breathing, brightness traced over time. It looks like hills and valleys on a line, and those hills and valleys tell us about shape and spin and the dance between heat and shadow. If the traveller were made by intention, what would we see? We would expect edges, perhaps, or repeating panels, or radio murmurs that line up into a pattern like fence posts in the static. We would expect power that does not fade with distance quite the way sunlight fades. We would expect heat that says, "Here a machine is working." We would expect, maybe, a message braided into narrow beams, like a lighthouse sweeping the sea. We have not found that. What we have found are subtler puzzles, unexpected accelerations that might still be made by ordinary outgassing. reflectivity that could be dust or frost or a surface polished by travel, shapes that are hard to see and easy to misread, because distance turns even sturdy facts into soft suggestions. To some, the word probe means a question asked with hands. If someone else is out there, perhaps they too have questions with hands. They might send a traveller to learn how sunlight feels here, how magnetic fields curl and uncurl around a warm star, how dust tastes where planets grow. They might not speak at all, but listen. Listen for our radio breath, for the way our blue planet glints as it turns, for the way our storms climb into the upper air and then fall asleep. If their traveller passed by, it might look like a comet to our first glance. It might wear a coat of dust and ice as camouflage, or it might simply come from a place where dust and ice are easy materials. But if that thought is a lullaby, science is the steady hand that pats our shoulder and says, "Let us test this dream against the morning." Now imagine standing beside a small pond at dusk. Fireflies blink across the reeds. One seems to choose a path that surprises you, zigzagging not like the others. For a moment, your heart lifts. Is it trying to speak? You follow it with your eyes, learning the pattern. In time, you see that the zigzag fits the shape of the wind, the warm and cool currents in the air, the tiny hunger of a creature looking for food. It is not less wonderful to learn this. In fact, it is more wonderful because you've learned how the world arranges itself with quiet purpose. Comets are like those fireflies. Their patterns are shaped by heat and mass and spin, by sunlight and shadow, by tiny breaths of gas that push and pull. Each surprise becomes a chance to discover another small law of how the universe moves. Some scientists believe that comets brought water to early Earth, that their ancient suitcases opened here and gave our rivers their first stories. Others wonder if comets also delivered certain organic molecules, the raw phrases for life's long poem. If that is true, then every comet is part of our family history. When you drink a glass of water, a few molecules might be the same ones that left a comet tail long before people counted years. You swallow a note from a choir that sang before our planet learned to cool. The idea is not a fairy tale, it is a careful thought, woven from measurements and models and the stubborn friendliness of evidence. There is tenderness in measuring the sky. It takes patience to let the dark breathe while your instrument listens. It takes humility to admit when a number does not fit and to try again. It takes courage to walk the thin path between wonder and wish. Wonder wants to open every door. Wish wants to paint the world before seeing it. Between them, science keeps a candle lit and writes what the light shows. Even the possibility of a crafted traveller, a probe, does not insult science. It simply asks science to be more awake, more precise, more gentle in its attention. If someday we find stronger signs, science will not be embarrassed. It will be ready. Let's drift deeper into the traveller's body. Picture a cold core shaped not like a perfect sphere but like a potato or a shard or a pancake or something stranger that words do not hold well. The surface is dark, a charcoal that swallows light, yet patches brighten when fresh ice is exposed. Cracks open like sleepy eyes. Sunlight moves across, and parts that were night become day, and day becomes night again as the traveller tumbles. Heat creeps down through the skin and loosens ices that sat quiet for ages. Gas escapes, not equally, never equally, and so the traveller is nudged. This is the quiet engine of comets. No gears, no pistons, only sunlight turning to motion through the grace of simplicity. If we sent a spacecraft to meet such a visitor, we would plan like gardeners who want to catch seeds on the wind. We would study the path again and again. We would ask our engines to speak in small burns, gentle corrections, so that we arrive with a touch as soft as a moth's wing. When we get there, our cameras would blink open, and the face of the traveller would fill our view with unfamiliar detail. We would see layers and boulders and slopes made of powder that behaves like both sand and smoke. We would taste the gas and count the dust and learn the temperature of noon and midnight in a day that might be only minutes long. We would listen for fields of electricity and magnetism, for the way the sun's wind combs the gas into a long, pale plume. And if by some soft miracle we found signs of crafting, a panel, a seam, a whisper of engineered heat, then we would breathe slowly and check again. We would remember how often nature builds shapes that fool the eye. Hexagons in ice, spheres in raindrops, spirals in shells, and the quiet razor-straight edges of crystals. We would test and test again, not because we fear the answer, but because truth is best welcomed after several kind knocks. For now, we watch. The traveller's path bends around the sun like a branch bowed by snow. On the way in, it speeds. On the way out, it lets go. Its gifts to us are small and bright, new lines in the spectrum, new points on the curve, new chances to practice our patience. Children draw it with crayons, a dark almond with a long pale tail. Grown-ups draw it with equations, numbers cradled by other numbers balanced like stones. The drawings, in the end, are the same kind of love. You can almost feel the cold of the traveller if you close your eyes. You can almost taste the dust, dry and fine. You can hear the silence spooling behind it, a thread so long it ties together places we cannot name. The night keeps it safe, the day reveals it. Our questions walk beside it like gentle animals, and our answers follow, footsteps in soft ground. Whether it is only ice and dust or something more, it teaches us the same lesson. To look up with kindness, to measure with care, to let wonder and caution hold hands. The traveller recedes. The numbers will keep arriving for a while, little parcels on the morning porch of our servers. Teams will meet and compare, and some will say the motions are unusual, and others will shrug and point to models. Papers will be written as neat and patient as quilts. The quilts will have bright squares and dark ones, and taken together they will warm our understanding. No single square is the whole blanket. Science is the stitching. Now imagine the sky again. The page turned, the ink still drying where the traveller passed. In a year you might not see it at all with your eyes, but you will remember the feeling of waiting on your back deck. The wooden boards cool under your heels, the cell of earth and faint leaves, the comfort of knowing that something very old and very quiet moved through your life for a moment. You will remember that the universe is both neighbour and wilderness. You will remember that uncertainty is not an empty room. It is a room with a window open and a night breeze passing through. The traveller is not ours to keep. It belongs to distances, but the questions it leaves behind are a kind of gentle furniture we can live with. Is the universe busy with life? Do other minds send their own messengers to learn the flavour of foreign suns? Could a thing built far away wear the coat of a comet and slip among the natural travellers without fuss? We do not know yet. The not knowing is not a failure. It is a soft meadow where we can lie down and let the crickets of thought sing. As the last brightness thins, as the curve of its path opens toward the next dark pasture of space, we wave with our instruments and with our hearts. Thank you, we think, for the light you lent our night. Thank you for the chance to practice being gentle with truth. Thank you for reminding us that a question can be beautiful even before it is answered. And in that gratitude, a new curiosity begins to lift its head. Perhaps tomorrow the spectra will tell us one more small thing. Perhaps next month the models will line up more neatly. Perhaps a future telescope, larger and more delicate, will catch a clue we could not reach before. Between perhaps and perhaps, the mind finds a rhythm. Like oars dipping in water, we move forward, not fast, not slow, just steady, learning the shape of wonder's shore. If there is a listener on the traveller, if there is any ear or instrument tucked within, perhaps it hears our planet hum in radio and lightning, in auroras that write green poems at our poles. Perhaps it notes our oceans breathing, our clouds laughing in slow curls. If so, may it also hear the kindness with which we watch. May it hear that we look not to capture or to claim, but to understand the way a child understands rain by standing in it and lifting their face. If that listener exists, it will know we are learners, and that is a good thing to be in a universe this wide. The night closes a little, the way a bird folds its wings when it comes to rest. The traveller thins to faintness. The stories begin to settle in us, lining our thoughts like soft felt. We turn off porch lights and the dim screens, and the data keeps travelling through wires, small stars in the dark rooms of servers and labs. Somewhere, an astronomer finishes a shift and steps outside and looks up with sleepy eyes. The sky is the same, and not the same. The messenger has passed. The message continues, not as a sentence we can quote, but as a way of seeing. In that way, it will stay with us, long after the dust has drifted and the tale has thinned, like breath on a winter morning returning to air. In the gentle hush after, we hold one simple thought, that every traveller, whether made by gravity or by hands we have not met, is part of the same lesson. The cosmos is not an argument to win, it is a lullaby to learn. We will listen again tomorrow. We will listen for a very long time. Now imagine the traveller once more, but this time not as a single streak across the night sky, but as part of a chorus of wanderers. Each comet, each asteroid, each shard of dust is a note in a cosmic lullaby that stretches across billions of years. Some of these notes are soft, almost silent, never touching Earth, or even the inner solar system. Others arrive with brightness and tales of light, reminding us that the universe is still alive with motion, still writing its story in the dark. To place 3I/Atlas among them is to recognize that we are always receiving visitors, always in quiet dialogue with the spaces beyond our star. The comet Atlas, born in the far reaches, carried with it a memory of distance. Its fragments and faint tail were not just simple dust, they were time capsules, holding inside them information about the earliest days of our galaxy's infancy. Scientists study the ratios of gases, the delicate fingerprints of isotopes, the mineral fragments inside each icy grain. These are not just numbers on a chart, they are poems written by physics itself. They whisper of how stars cooked heavier elements, how nebulae cooled, how gravity gathered scattered particles into delicate snowballs. Each measurement is a line of verse, a reminder that our own Earth once began in this same process. Dust clumping into stone, stone melting into ocean, oceans growing into life. Atlas was not the first interstellar traveller we have seen, nor will it be the last. Before it came Oumuamua, that strange elongated shape, its path whispering to us that it hailed from another star system altogether. Oumuamua spun like a baton twirling across the cosmos, and its odd acceleration made us lean closer. Some thought it was merely a shard of rock, others a sliver of frozen hydrogen, others still wondered if it could be a probe, an alien instrument disguised as a shard of nature. That question did not find a clear answer, but it opened a new way of seeing. For once we admitted the possibility, we understood that our instruments must always be ready to notice the unexpected. Atlas carried this legacy, becoming part of a lineage of travellers that remind us the universe is not closed. The stars send guests across each other's doorsteps. Comets are bridges between worlds. They may form near one star but wander into another's light. They are records of chemistry and physics that no lab on Earth could reproduce in perfect detail. By studying them, we glimpse the materials that may also drift in far-off planetary systems, the same materials that might give birth to life in corners of the galaxy we have never seen. Atlas, fragile and bright, was like a letter carried across the Black Sea, its envelope torn by heat and pressure as it neared our sun, but still bearing traces of the message inside. Some scientists describe such comets as messengers of panspermia, the idea that life's ingredients are scattered like pollen by winds of starlight, landing where they may, sometimes in fertile ground. Let's drift deeper into this thought. Life, in its simplest form, is chemistry dancing under gentle conditions. Amino acids, nucleotides, sugars, they are steps of a choreography that becomes more complex until it learns to replicate, to adapt, to dream. Comets hold some of these building blocks. When they touch a planet, they might deliver them like small packages, seeds left at a doorstep. Earth may have been seeded this way. Its early oceans stirred with comet dust until the chemistry bloomed into biology. If Atlas carries similar packages, then every moment it drifted past was another opportunity to imagine. If not here, then elsewhere. Perhaps these seeds find purchase. The night sky is not just decoration, it is a library. Each comet is a book whose pages are partly frozen, partly written in dust. Some of the writing is faint, smudged by distance. Some is crisp and startling, new to our eyes. Atlas's pages told of fragile bonds between water and carbon, of fractures opened by sunlight, of grains small enough to float yet heavy enough to shine. Scientists turn those pages carefully, aware that if they interpreted them well, they might learn how common these books are, and how widely scattered the stories of creation might be. There is tenderness in considering comets as alien probes, not because we are certain they are, but because thought itself changes the way we look. It asks us to pay attention, to read more carefully. If we assume nature alone is responsible, we look for chemistry, physics, gravity, thermodynamics. If we allow a sliver of possibility that intelligence is involved, we sharpen our senses. We ask, what patterns are too neat to be random? What signals cannot be explained by outgassing or fracture? What motions are not satisfied by gravity's equations? And whether or not the probe exists, the act of asking makes us better scientists. Doubt, after all, is a form of love. Love for truth, love for detail, love for the mystery that hides behind appearances. Atlas grew bright, then dim, then broke into pieces. To some this seemed like a failure, a comet too fragile to last. But to others it was a gift. The fragments gave us new chances to study its interior, to glimpse the secret rooms usually locked away. Its light curve changed, its orbit shifted, its dust spread out like fine mist across the sky. Each fragment was like a chapter torn from the book, scattered by wind, yet still legible if you gathered the pieces with patience. And patience is the heart of science. We do not always get the clean stories we hope for. Times the sky tears its manuscripts, and we are left to piece them together with quiet care. In that process, we discover new insights we could not have seen otherwise. Some nights, Atlas seemed to whisper with its tail, faint and ghostly, stretched by solar wind. That tail was not just a stream of dust, but a memory of its encounter with light. Every photon that struck it, every ion that brushed against it left an imprint. To watch a comet's tail is to watch sunlight and wind playing upon a fragile canvas. The shapes and colours tell us about the solar wind itself, about the forces that stream invisibly from the sun. Comets are not only visitors, they are instruments, recording the conditions of space as they pass through. In that way, every comet is already a probe, though not an alien one, but a natural one, built by physics and chance. To call Atlas an alien probe is to take a metaphor seriously, to acknowledge that sometimes the boundary between natural instrument and crafted instrument is thin. Think of the way a shell holds the memory of waves, or how a tree's rings hold the memory of seasons. Atlas holds the memory of its origin, but also the memory of its passing here. When it is gone, the memory remains in our telescopes, our papers, our data, but memory also lingers in our imagination. We remember how it made us feel to look up and wonder. We remember the questions it stirred. Sometimes the memory is more important than the object itself, because it continues to live and grow in us long after the comet itself is gone. Now imagine the universe as a grand field under moonlight filled with countless fireflies. Each one is a traveller, moving, flickering, whispering. Some flash brightly and vanish, others linger, circling slowly, as if reluctant to leave. Atlas was one of these fireflies, and for a time we followed its glow. We asked what made it flicker, what made it dance. We wondered if behind that flicker there might be intention. The truth is not yet known, but the wondering itself is precious. It is the gentle pulse of human curiosity, the soft heartbeat of science. If Atlas were a probe, what message would it carry? Perhaps not a message in words, but in silence, in observation. It might listen more than it speaks. It might carry instruments tuned to the warmth of planets, to the whisper of magnetic fields, to the hum of civilizations carried on radio waves. It might watch us the way we watch the night sky, carefully, patiently, without hurry. And if so, perhaps its greatest message is not a transmission, but its presence. The very act of arriving is itself a hello. But if Atlas is simply a comet, a fragile snowball of dust and ice, then that too is a hello. A comet says, I am proof of how stars and planets are born. I am proof that the universe is generous with its materials. I am proof that water and carbon are not rare treasures, but common gifts scattered freely. To know this is to feel less alone. To know this is to sense that the universe may be fertile in places we cannot yet reach. The comet speaks in the language of chemistry, but the meaning is deeply human. You belong to something vast and ongoing, a story that began before you and will continue after you. Atlas broke apart, but even in its breaking it offered wisdom. The fragments drifted like lanterns fading at the edge of night. And as they faded, Scientists kept watching, measuring brightness, charting trajectory. Even in failure, data bloomed. Even in silence, there was meaning. This too is a lesson, that endings are not the end, but part of a cycle. Dust becomes light. Light becomes data. Data becomes understanding. Understanding becomes wonder. And wonder is what we carry forward, long after the comet itself is gone. Now close your eyes and feel the thought of Atlas as it brushes past our world. Its journey is long, its visit brief, but its presence lingers. Whether probe or comet, alien messenger or frozen archive, it teaches the same lesson, that the universe is alive with questions, that beauty lies in uncertainty, and that every visitor, no matter how fragile, leaves us richer for having passed by. The story of Atlas does not end with its fading tail or its broken pieces. The story continues in the hearts of those who watched it, in the notebooks filled with numbers, and in the quiet dreams it left behind. Each comet, each traveller, is more than its chemistry, it is also the reflection it awakens in us. And so we sit with Atlas, not as a bright body in the sky anymore, but as a memory, and we let its passing guide us into deeper thoughts about ourselves, our place in the universe, and the mysteries we have not yet unfolded. When we speak of probes, we often think of machines we build, carefully shaped metal, and circuits sent across the void to carry our questions outward. Voyager with its golden record, Pioneer with its etched plaques, New Horizons with its photographs of Pluto. All of them are questions we threw into the sky, hoping the stars might answer. But sometimes, perhaps, the universe sends probes of its own, not with wires and codes, but with dust and ice. Atlas may not be artificial in the way we understand, yet it is still a probe from nature itself, an emissary of physics and time. By studying it, we are listening to the universe ask, do you remember where you came from? Do you remember that you are dust, water, carbon and light? This question is tender because it does not demand an answer in words. It asks us to feel, to breathe, to remember that we are children of the same processes. When we look at Atlas, we see our own story reflected back. We too are fragments of stardust, bound together by gravity, warmed by sunlight, learning to ask questions. The comet drifts past and we, watching, awaken to the fact that we are not separate from it. The same forces that shaped Atlas shaped us. The same particles that built its icy skin may be kin to the particles that stir in our blood. To look at the comet is to look into a mirror, though the reflection is faint and very old. Atlas's breaking reminds us that fragility is not failure. Fragility is part of beauty. The most delicate things often teach us the deepest lessons. A snowflake melts, yet its brief form tells us about air and temperature, about crystals and order. A soap bubble bursts, yet in its rainbow skin we glimpse the physics of light. Atlas broke apart, yet in breaking it showed us its inside, revealed secrets that had been locked away for eons. Sometimes only through endings do we gain beginnings. Sometimes only through silence do we learn to listen more carefully. Now imagine Atlas leaving, moving into the distance where even our strongest telescopes can no longer follow. Its trail thins, its fragments scatter, and space swallows it with patient arms. Yet the echo remains, not in sound but in thought. Scientists will publish their findings, students will read about it in classrooms, artists will paint it, poets will describe it, and dreamers will wonder whether one day another Atlas will arrive, one that endures longer, shines brighter, whispers louder. The universe is generous with second chances. There will be other travelers, other notes in the sky's song. And as we prepare for those, we build better instruments. The lesson of each comet is not only in what it carries, but in how it sharpens our tools. With Atlas, we learned that fragility demands patience, that brightness demands careful timing, that fading demands quick attention. With Oumuamua, we learn to look for the strange, to question acceleration. With other comets, we learn about tails, about spectra, about the chemistry of beginnings. Each visitor is a teacher, and each departure leaves us wiser. In this way, Atlas becomes not just a story of dust, but a story of growth, our own growth as watchers of the sky. It is possible, of course, that one day we will find a visitor whose strangeness cannot be explained by the natural processes. Perhaps a shape too regular, a signal too patterned, a motion too deliberate. Perhaps then the question of alien probes will become more than speculation. But even before that day, we are learning to look differently. We are learning that the line between nature and intention is not always obvious. We are learning that every object deserves attention, not just the bright ones, not just the spectacular ones. Atlas, in its fragile and quiet way, trained us to be more gentle in our gaze. That is itself a gift. Some nights you can still close your eyes and picture it. A faint green glow, a tail like a whisper, moving against the field of stars. The stars themselves are so far, yet Atlas crossed among them like a firefly across lanterns. Never truly alone, the sky is full of companions, of dust and gas, of unseen currents and silent winds. And we too are not alone, though sometimes it feels so. To watch Atlas was to be reminded that we are part of a moving cosmos, part of a vast dance where even the smallest particles play a role. We belong to that dance. We are dancers too. The possibility of Atlas as an alien probe is not just a question about other civilizations, it is also a question about how we define curiosity. What if another intelligence somewhere far away also wondered about us, the way we wonder about them? What if they too built instruments of dust and ice, or disguised them in such forms, letting them drift casually into our system? The thought is soft like a candle flame. It does not prove itself, but it illuminates our imagination, invites us to consider that curiosity may be universal, that we are not alone in our hunger to know. To imagine this is not foolish, it is a form of hope, and hope, like dust, travels far. Atlas, in truth, may never reveal all its secrets. That is part of the beauty. Not everything is meant to be fully explained. Mystery is not a flaw in the fabric of the universe. It is one of its threads. Without mystery, curiosity would have no home. Without questions, answers would wither. The comet's silence is as meaningful as its light. Its silence says, "Look, listen, wonder." Its silence says, "Your journey is still unfolding, and so is mine." At the edge of sleep, when the mind drifts like a small boat across a calm lake, thoughts of Atlas may return. You might see its pale glow again, moving across a velvet sky. You might feel the ancient dust brush against your imagination. You might wonder if somewhere in another system another mind is also looking up, also asking about comets, also whispering the same quiet questions. The thought itself is soothing. It ties us to the greater whole. It reminds us that across the distances, curiosity is a bridge and wonder is the thread. And so the story of Atlas settles into its ending. It is not a loud ending, not a dramatic one. It is soft, like the settling of snow on branches, like the dimming of twilight into night. Atlas leaves behind no monuments, only fragments, light curves, memories. But those are enough. They are more than enough. For in them we find the essence of science itself, patient, gentle, poetic, filled with love for truth and beauty alike. The sky closes its page. The messenger is gone, yet the message remains, not in words, but in the way we now look at the stars, with more tenderness, more openness, more readiness to be surprised. Atlas has passed, but its song continues, a song written in dust, sung in light, remembered in wonder, and we, listeners of the cosmos, will carry that song forward, waiting for the next note to rise, waiting for the next traveller to remind us that the universe is both vast and close, both silent and full of voices, both mysterious and deeply, deeply kind. The night sky carries a silence so deep it seems to fold over itself, and within that silence sometimes a guest appears, drifting with the quiet certainty of something older than memory. We call it a comet, but names are only small lanterns trying to light the vastness of what it is. This one, the visitor we know as Atlas, moved with a ghostly shimmer, as if it had been shaped in the cold hands of time itself. Its light was soft, greenish, like breath caught in crystal. To watch it was to feel the sky whisper, to feel that you were listening to something not spoken in human language but sung in the rhythm of stars. This whisper was not loud, not demanding. It was gentle, almost shy, as if the frozen visitor wanted us to lean in closer, to truly listen with patience. From a scientific view, comets are often described as icy planetesimals, relics from the solar system's early days. They are fragile archives of water, carbon compounds, silicates, and dust left over from the very dawn of planetary formation. But when Atlas appeared, it brought more than data. It brought a kind of presence, as though the universe had sent a reminder of its deep history and its wider possibilities. Astronomers turned their instruments toward it, measuring its brightness, charting its trajectory, tracing the delicate streamers of gas and dust as they unfurled from its surface. Each line of observation was a form of listening. Each note record was part of the whisper, and beneath it all, the idea stirred gently. Perhaps this visitor is more than it appears. Perhaps it carries not just chemistry but intention. The idea that a comet might be a probe sent from elsewhere may sound like fantasy, yet it arises naturally from wonder. For what is a probe but a messenger, a traveller carrying information from one place to another? A comet, by its very nature, does this. It bears the record of ancient conditions, preserved for billions of years in frozen silence. When sunlight warms its surface, it releases those records in vapour and dust, scattering them into the solar wind where we can capture and read them. If nature can craft such a probe, could intelligence also craft one using the same materials, cloaked in the same forms? This question hums softly, not insisting on an answer, but inviting curiosity to stay awake. The whisper of Atlas was not in words, but in the way it fractured, brightened, and dimmed. Its body broke into pieces as it neared the sun, as though the heat had pried open an ancient book and let its pages scatter. Each fragment glowed faintly, each piece a syllable of the larger whisper. Some called it a disappointment, a failed great comet, but in truth its breaking was another form of speech. It was as though Atlas had chosen not to blaze in permanence, but to dissolve into many voices, each one carrying a part of its story. The fragments stretched across the sky like scattered lanterns, and for those who watched carefully, the beauty was not lessened by the loss. It was deepened. Astronomers listened with their instruments. They traced the spectra of gases, finding the fingerprints of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, water vapour. These molecules are simple, yet their simplicity is profound. They are the same molecules that drifted in the nebula where our sun was born. The same molecules that now curl in the clouds of distant galaxies. The same molecules that shaped the first chemistry of life.
To see them spilling from a comet is to hear the echo of beginnings. And so the whisper of Atlas was also the whisper of our own origins. It said, "You are made of the same dust, the same ice, the same quiet music."
There is a poetry in how comets reflect sunlight. Unlike the steady glow of stars, their light changes, grows brighter, then fainter, pulsing as their shapes tumble and their gases shift. Watching Atlas was like watching the breathing of something immense, a slow inhalation and exhalation across weeks. Scientists call this the light curve. To the imagination, it is the whisper-given rhythm, a breath from the frozen visitor. To see this breath was to feel connected, not to an alien machine, but to the vast continuity of nature, which builds beauty even from ice and rock drifting through the dark. Yet the idea of probes lingers. If Atlas were more than natural, how would we know? Would we find patterns too deliberate in its brightness? Would its motion resist the simple explanations of gravity and outgassing? Would it carry a signal, a pulse of radio waves hiding in the static? No such clear signs were found, but the very act of asking tuned our senses more finely. By wondering, we became better listeners. By entertaining the possibility of intention, we learned to look more deeply at the subtleties of nature. And perhaps that was the whisper's true purpose, not to declare itself, but to draw out our curiosity, to make us gentler in our attention. The frozen visitor moved on, drifting away from the warmth that had undone it. Its fragments grew fainter, slipping into invisibility. Yet the whisper did not fade. It remained in our thoughts, in the quiet conversations of scientists, in the soft wonder of those who had lifted their eyes to see it. The whisper was not only about Atlas, it was about all comets, all travellers, all messengers. It was about the idea that every fragment of the universe carries a story, and that our task is not always to solve, but to listen. The frozen visitor had come and gone, but the listening continued, and through that listening we learned to hear ourselves as part of the cosmos. In the end, the whisper of Atlas was both science and poetry, both data and dream. It told us that the universe still holds archives of its beginnings, drifting quietly in cold orbits until chance and gravity bring them near. It told us that fragility is not failure, but another form of communication. It told us that even in silence, meaning exists. And as we let the whisper settle into memory, we felt the comfort of knowing that the sky is alive with such voices, waiting for us to hear them, waiting for us to remember that we too are messengers, fragile and bright, carrying stories of our own. The whisper from the frozen visitor did not end when its fragments dissolved into the emptiness of space. It continued in the conversations of scientists, in the dreams of children gazing upward, and in the patient pages of data gathered night after night. Atlas was no longer bright to the naked eye. But in another way, it was brighter than ever before. Its whisper had entered our minds, and once inside it could not be silenced. It asked us to listen more deeply, not only to comets, but to all the quiet voices of the cosmos. Voices that move too slowly for our ordinary attention. Voices that reveal themselves only when we bring patience to our gaze. To understand Atlas was to understand fragility. Its breakup was not a failure, but a story told in pieces. Each fragment that drifted away was a lesson. Comets are not solid, eternal stones. They are layered archives, shells and pockets of ice stitched together by gravity's faint pull. They carry voids inside them, caverns filled with ancient ices, ready to burst open when warmed. Atlas's breakup revealed this architecture more clearly than any intact passage could. By dissolving, it spoke to us about its own design, and that design, fragile as it was, held echoes of how the solar system first formed, how particles clumped, how dust and ice found each other in the darkness and learned to hold on. Scientists often compare comets to time capsules, but time capsules are buried deliberately, meant to be opened by future hands. Comets are different. They are not buried, but wandering, not sealed, but crumbling, not hidden, but patient. They drift through time with no certainty of who will read their contents. When we study them, we become the unplanned readers of letters written long ago, letters not meant for us, yet perfectly suited to us. Atlas's whisper was such a letter, its message unfolding not in neat sentences, but in the chemistry of vapor, the brightness of light curves, the sudden violence of disintegration. Each clue was a word, each pattern a phrase, and together they formed a quiet poem that we are still learning to interpret. The question of alien probes hovered at the edges of Atlas's story, not because there was proof, but because there was wonder. Could a visitor like this be more than dust and ice? Could it be wrapped around a hollow, hiding instruments beneath? Could it carry silence as its camouflage? These questions are not answered, but they are not dismissed either. They remind us that science is not only about facts, but about possibilities. Wonder is the soil in which facts grow. Without wonder, we would not look up, would not build telescopes, would not care to measure faint traces of light. The whisper of Atlas was, in part, a whisper of wonder, urging us not to close the door too quickly, not to decide too soon what is possible and what is not. As Atlas dissolved, it left behind dust that trailed along its orbit. This dust may someday fall into Earth's skies as meteors, burning brightly for a moment before vanishing into air. If you ever see such a streak, you may be watching the final remnants of Atlas, a visitor's last gift to the night. In that fleeting light, you could imagine the comet's whisper once more, transformed into fire across our atmosphere, a message delivered in flame instead of frost. The visitor may be gone, but its presence lingers in these possibilities, scattered across time like seeds waiting for the right season. The chemistry of comets is simple but profound. Water ice, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, organic molecules, each one carries a history stretching back billions of years. When combined, they tell a story not only of comets, but of planets and life. Many scientists believe Earth's water may have been delivered, at least in part, by comets striking its young surface. If so, then every sip of water is a comet's whisper inside us. Every drop of rain, every river flowing to the sea, every tear on a cheek, all may carry a trace of these ancient visitors. Atlas too may have carried such water, such organics, such simple beginnings, and though it broke apart before reaching us, its chemistry reminds us that the materials of life are not rare treasures, but abundant gifts scattered through space like gentle rain. The whisper also reminded us of perspective. In the scale of the cosmos, comets are small, fragile, almost insignificant. Yet to us, they are vast, luminous, overwhelming in their beauty. The frozen visitor was no larger than a mountain, yet it carried with it the power to stir imagination across a whole planet. This is the paradox of comets. They are both tiny and immense, both fleeting and eternal. Their whisper is soft, yet it echoes loudly in human hearts. To see Atlas was to feel this paradox, to sense that even the smallest travellers can alter the way we see the universe. Now imagine listening not with telescopes but with your whole body. Imagine standing beneath the night sky as Atlas drifted past, its light faint but real, its whisper threading through your breath. You feel the cool air, you hear the rustle of leaves, and in that stillness you sense that the universe itself is alive with quiet presence. Atlas is part of that presence. Its whisper is not only for astronomers with instruments, but for anyone willing to pause, to lift their eyes, to open their imagination. The frozen visitor was a reminder that science is not separate from daily life. It is woven into every breath, every glance, every moment of wonder. Somewhere in another star system there may be beings who watch their own comets, who ask their own questions about whether visitors are natural or crafted. Perhaps they too wonder if the glowing fragments in their sky are probes from elsewhere. If so, then Atlas's whisper is not just for us, but part of a larger chorus of curiosity across the cosmos. The idea that others may be listening, others may be wondering, is itself a comfort. It suggests that wonder is not unique to us, that curiosity may be a universal language, spoken in starlight and silence. The frozen visitor's whisper is still with us, even now. It reminds us that endings can be beginnings, that fragility can be strength, that silence can be full of meaning. It asks us to listen more carefully, not only to comets, but to all the faint voices of the universe. The hum of cosmic background radiation, the pulse of pulsars, the drift of galaxies, the quiet fall of meteors. Each voice adds to the song, and together they form the great whisper of existence. Atlas was one note in that song, a delicate, fleeting note, but without it the song would be less complete. In time, Atlas will be forgotten by most. New comets will come, new data will fill the pages, new mysteries will arrive, but for those who listened, the memory will remain. The frozen visitor has already given its gift. It has taught us to be gentler in our attention, more open to mystery, more willing to let questions linger without rushing to answers. That is the whisper we carry forward, a whisper that echoes not only in science but in life itself. To listen is to live more fully. To wonder is to be more alive. The frozen visitor taught us this, and though it is gone, its lesson endures. The whisper of the frozen visitor carries us now into reflection, into the soft closing of its story. A closing that is not abrupt but gradual, like twilight giving way to night. Atlas may have dissolved, its fragments scattered, its glow dimmed beyond our sight, but what it left behind is not lost. What remains is the feeling of being brushed by something ancient, something delicate, something that came from far away to remind us of our place in the cosmos. Its whisper still threads through our thoughts, gentle as the sound of leaves stirred by evening wind, carrying both mystery and comfort. When Atlas first brightened, we imagined it would become a great comet, perhaps as bright as those that have lit up history, filling skies, inspiring awe across generations. Yet instead of a long, blazing performance, Atlas gave us a fragile and fleeting glow. Some might see this as disappointment, but disappointment fades when one learns to listen differently. What Atlas gave was not grandeur, but intimacy. It came close, it brightened, it broke apart, it revealed its weakness, and in that weakness, its truth. Sometimes the universe does not speak in thunder. Sometimes it whispers, and the whisper is more meaningful than a roar. In breaking, Atlas became more accessible. Its fragments spread its story wider, gave us more chances to study its composition, to glimpse its inner nature. If it had remained intact, its surface would have hidden those details, protecting them behind a shell. Instead, the shell fractured, the hidden became visible, and knowledge grew. Fragility, then, was a gift. It reminded us that endings and openings are intertwined, that to lose one form is to gain another. Atlas did not fail, it transformed, and in its transformation, it spoke with a voice more complex, more layered, more human than we expected. The possibility that Atlas might be more than natural, that it might be an alien probe, still lingers softly in imagination. Even if evidence does not confirm this, the very thought shapes how we see. It trains us to be attentive, to be curious, to notice what is unusual. Wonder is not wasted, even when it is unproven. It makes us gentler scientists, better listeners, more open to the unexpected. Perhaps that is the real purpose of such ideas, not to prove themselves, but to prepare us. If one day a true probe drifts past, disguised as a comet or shining openly as a machine, we will be ready to listen, because Atlas and others like it taught us how. There is beauty in imagining Atlas as a messenger, even if only metaphorically. It reminds us that the universe is not silent, that every traveller carries information, that every encounter is a kind of conversation. The comet spoke in chemistry and brightness, in fragments and tales, in patterns of fading and returning. These are not words in our language, but they are words nonetheless. To learn to read them is to expand what we mean by listening. And the more we listen, the more connected we become, not just to comets, but to stars, to planets, to the whole woven fabric of the cosmos. Atlas leaves us with the reminder that science itself is a form of listening. It is not about conquering, not about controlling, but about opening ourselves to what is there, about letting reality reveal itself slowly. The frozen visitor encouraged us to slow down, to watch carefully, to let meaning unfold over time. Its story was not a quick headline, but a patient unfolding, a rhythm measured in weeks and months, not moments. This patience is part of the lesson. The universe is vast and its stories are long. To hear them, we must learn to match their pace. Now imagine Atlas far from us, its fragments continuing their drift, quiet in the cold. No eye sees them now, no telescope follows, yet they still exist, moving silently, carrying their frozen memories. They are like thoughts unspoken, still real, still alive, even when invisible. In a way, we too are like those fragments, small, drifting, fragile, but full of memory, full of story. To see ourselves in Atlas is to recognize that fragility does not diminish meaning. It deepens it. We are brief, we are delicate, but in our briefness we carry something eternal. the ability to wonder. Comets like Atlas are bridges to our past and our future. They remind us of the nebula that gave birth to our sun, and they hint at the seeds that may bloom on worlds we have not yet seen. They tie us to the beginning and stretch us toward what lies ahead. To listen to them is to listen to the arc of time itself. The frozen visitor's whisper was not only about itself, it was about the continuity of creation, the persistence of curiosity, the patience of the cosmos. It was an invitation to remember that we are part of this continuity, not separate, not observers alone, but participants in the same unfolding. As Atlas's story fades, we are left not with silence, but with resonance. The resonance of data echoing in research, the resonance of wonder echoing in imagination, the resonance of humility echoing in hearts that know the sky is greater than themselves. This resonance will carry us to the next visitor, the next comet, the next mystery. Each one will bring new whispers, new lessons, new reminders that the cosmos is not empty but full of voices waiting to be heard. In the end, the frozen visitor teaches us a simple truth. To listen is enough. To wonder is enough. To stand beneath the stars and let their light touch your eyes is already to be part of the story. Whether Atlas was a comet, a probe, or something in between, it gave us this gift. The chance to pause, to notice, to feel small but connected, fragile but luminous. That is the kind of gift that does not fade, even when the light itself is gone. And so the whisper continues, not from the comet itself, but from within us. We carry it now, every time we look up, every time we wonder, every time we listen. Atlas may be gone, but its song is ours to remember. The frozen visitor has left its mark not only in the sky, but in the way we see the sky. And as we wait for the next traveller, we do so with softer eyes, with deeper patience, with hearts more ready to be moved by whispers from beyond. There are languages in the universe that do not use words, that do not rely on voices or alphabets, but instead speak through motion, through sense, through the quiet unfolding of presence. When we imagine alien probes, we often picture machines like our own, metal arms, solar panels, antennas that reach out into the dark. Yet perhaps the silent language of alien probes is different, softer, more subtle. Perhaps their message is not in beeping signals or coded transmissions, but in the way they move, in the way they reflect light, in the way they arrive and depart. A comet, a fragment of ice, a shard of stone, these may all be part of a universal vocabulary we have not yet learned to read. The thought drifts gently. If another intelligence sought to know us, would it speak in words we understand or in gestures too vast for language? A probe disguised as a comet would not announce itself with noise. It would slip through the solar system as naturally as any visitor from the stars. It would not disturb or disrupt, but observe in quiet patience, taking note of how light dances on our oceans, how radio waves hum from our planet, how storms rise and fall like slow breaths. Its silence would be its strength. Its stillness would be its eloquence. To us, it might look like nothing more than a fragile traveller of ice. But to the careful observer, it would carry meaning layered deep in its path. We too use silence in our language, a pause between sentences, a breath before a reply, a look held across a room, all are forms of communication that speak without sound. In the same way, perhaps alien probes use silence as their primary language, leaving us signs not in voices, but in subtleties. The odd acceleration of a visitor like Oumuamua, the unexpected breakup of a comet like Atlas, the strange brightness of a fragment in the dark. These may be syllables of a greater story, fragments of a quiet dialogue between civilizations. To hear them, we must learn to listen differently, to let silence itself become a kind of speech. When we build our own probes, we fill them with instruments. We give them the ability to take photographs, to measure magnetic fields, to sense the composition of atmospheres. Yet from the perspective of another intelligence, perhaps the probe itself is the message. The shape, the trajectory, the materials chosen, all of these might be intentional, all of them carrying meaning to those who know how to read it. A probe disguised as a natural body would be a poem written in the language of physics, a verse composed of motion and reflection, written not for the eye but for the mind that knows how to interpret. This is the silent language, a language that requires patience, that demands we suspend our habit of rushing to explanations. Silence is not empty. Silence is full of patterns waiting to be understood. When a comet brightens, fades, brightens again, it is speaking in rhythm. When its orbit shifts slightly, nudged by outgassing or perhaps by something else, it is speaking in motion. When its tail stretches or fractures, when its fragments drift apart, it is speaking in shape. Each event is a syllable, each pattern a phrase, and together they form a dialogue that may span centuries. The universe speaks slowly. To listen, we must match its pace. We can almost imagine a classroom of the cosmos, where each comet is a lesson, each asteroid a chapter, each interstellar visitor a rare guest lecturer. In this classroom, the language is not taught in words but in phenomena. The teacher is time itself, the blackboard is the sky, and the chalk is light. The lesson of Atlas was fragility, the lesson of Oumuamua was strangeness, the lesson of other comets is persistence. Together they form a curriculum of wonder, a syllabus of sense. And as students, we learn slowly, sometimes clumsily, often with mistakes. But the lessons remain, patient and forgiving, always offering us another chance to listen more deeply. There is humility in recognizing that we may not yet understand the language being spoken. For centuries, humans saw comets as omens, as warnings from the gods. Later we learned to see them as natural, as icy relics from the early solar system. Now, perhaps, we are learning to see them as something more, as messages that may contain both natural history and the possibility of intention. Each stage of understanding is not wrong but incomplete, a translation slowly improving with time. Perhaps one day we will learn to read more fluently, to recognize when a visit is only a comet and when it might be something more. Until then, the silence itself teaches us patience. Silence is often misunderstood as absence, but silence is presence in a softer form. The silence of a snowy forest is full of life, the hidden steps of animals, the breath of trees, the pulse of frozen streams. The silence of space is full of light and motion, of comets drifting, of planets spinning, of galaxies expanding. To say a probe speaks in silence is not to say it says nothing, but that it says everything quietly. It says, "Here I am, passing through." It says, "I notice you, though I do not disturb you." It says, "Your sky is part of my journey, and my journey is part of your story." To listen to such silence is to be reminded that meaning does not always shout. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper, and sometimes as a stillness so vast it humbles us. The possibility of alien probes disguised as natural travellers forces us to reconsider our own assumptions. We expect communication to be loud, clear, direct. But perhaps advanced civilizations know that subtlety endures longer. A radio signal fades, a broadcast is lost in noise, but a comet-like probe can travel for eons, carrying its message in its very being. Its orbit, its reflectivity, its behaviour, these are not corrupted by time as easily as fragile signals are. In this way, silence becomes not weakness but resilience. The language of silent probes may be the most enduring language of all. Now imagine standing beneath the stars again, watching a faint traveller move across the sky. You do not hear it, you do not feel it, yet you know it is there, sliding quietly among the constellations. Its presence is enough to change your thoughts, to widen your perspective, to remind you of the vastness and intimacy of the universe. That is the power of the silent language. It does not need to declare itself. It changes you simply by being noticed. In its quiet way, it speaks to the deepest part of you, the part that yearns for connection, the part that listens for meaning in every flicker of light. Atlas, Oumuamua, and others like them may not be alien probes, but they may still be part of the silent language of the cosmos, teaching us to listen differently, to see more gently, to imagine more openly. And in that listening, we may prepare ourselves for the day when silence carries a message we cannot mistake. Until then, the sky is full of lessons, each comet a word, each asteroid a phrase, each visitor a sentence in the long, quiet book of the stars. To read it is to become fluent in silence, to learn the gentle, patient language of the universe itself. The silent language of alien probes deepens when we think of how meaning can be hidden in plain sight. A comet's curve through the solar system may look random, but within that curve is mathematics, precision, intention, written in gravity's hand. If we imagined a probe disguised as a comet, its most natural form of communication would not be noise, but motion itself. It might glide in ways that seem ordinary at first, but then reveal subtle deviations, a pause in its spin, an angle that resists expectation, a brightness that flickers with a rhythm. These would not be accidents. There would be words written in the ink of silence, waiting for us to notice. We too use such hidden languages. A lighthouse sweeps its light across the sea, not with sentences, but with pulses. A heartbeat carries its story not in speech, but in rhythm. A firefly signals not with words, but with patterned glow. In each case, the language is not heard, but seen, not shouted, but shown. Perhaps alien probes speak in the same way, knowing that silence travels farther than sound, that rhythm endures longer than words. The universe, after all, is a patient listener. It rewards those who notice the quiet details, the overlooked patterns, the faintest irregularities in the flow of things. When we consider Oumuamua, its elongated shape and its acceleration puzzled astronomers. It did not behave like an ordinary asteroid, and yet it did not perfectly match the behaviour of a comet either. It was something in between, something that slipped through categories. Its silence was not empty. Its silence was filled with questions, and in that silence we realise that our understanding of natural objects is still incomplete. Whether Oumuamua was natural or intentional, it spoke to us by making us ask better questions. That is the essence of the silent language, to move us toward curiosity, to guide us gently toward new ways of seeing. Atlas too carried such subtlety. Its breakup might have seemed like a failure, yet in its disintegration it told us about the fragility of icy bodies, about the stresses of solar heating, about the structure of comets as porous archives of dust and frozen gases. Each fragment was a syllable in its silent speech, scattering across the sky like words breaking apart, yet still carrying meaning. To listen was not to hear a voice, but to interpret a pattern. The universe speaks in patterns, and the patient mind learns to translate them into stories. Atlas's story was one of fragility, of transformation, of endings of all that open into new beginnings. Silence also carries comfort. When we listen to the quiet sky, we feel not abandoned but accompanied. The comets, the asteroids, the dust streams, all of them move with a rhythm that reassures us. We are part of a larger whole. The silent language tells us that nothing drifts alone, that every fragment belongs to the great story of motion and time. If alien probes exist among these travellers, they too are part of this whole, disguised not to deceive but to harmonise, to blend into the cosmic music without discord. To imagine this is to feel that intelligence elsewhere would seek connection, not conquest, subtlety rather than spectacle. We must also consider endurance. A radio signal might last for seconds, a broadcast for decades, but a probe disguised as a comet could endure for millions of years. It could pass through star systems silently, carrying its message in the form of its design, its trajectory, its presence. Its silence would outlast civilizations. Its quietness would be its survival. We often think of communication as something immediate, something fast. But perhaps the true language of the stars is slow, stretching across epochs. The silent probes may not seek immediate answers, but patient observation, knowing that one day, somewhere, someone will notice and understand. In our own history, silence has been a form of reverence. Monks sit in quiet meditation, travellers pause at mountaintops, overwhelmed by views beyond words. Lovers share stillness, knowing that presence itself is enough. Silence is not absence. Silence is fullness without noise. In this way, the idea of alien probes using silence as their language is not strange. It is familiar. It mirrors our own deepest forms of meaning. To imagine that others might share this is to imagine a kinship deeper than language, a kinship rooted in the very act of listening. The sky itself teaches this lesson. Stars shine without speaking. Galaxies spiral without declaration. The cosmic microwave background hums quietly, carrying the memory of the universe's birth. None of these shout. All of them speak through silence. We have learned to read this language slowly, through telescopes and instruments, through mathematics and patience. Alien probes, if they exist, would be another verse in this same silent song. They would not interrupt the harmony but add to it, another subtle rhythm in the music of the cosmos. Now imagine again standing beneath the stars, a faint traveller moving across your field of vision. You do not hear it, you do not touch it, yet it changes you. Its presence reminds you of distances too vast to measure, of timescales too long to grasp. It reminds you that silence is not emptiness but invitation. To stand there breathing the cool night air is to be part of the dialogue. The comet or probe does not need to announce itself. By existing, by passing, it has already spoken, and by noticing you have already replied. The silent language of alien probes, then, may be the same as the silent language of nature itself. To recognize this is to blur the line between the natural and the intentional. Perhaps the distinction is not as sharp as we think. Perhaps intelligence grows from nature, and nature itself is intelligent in ways we do not yet understand. The probes may not be foreign to the cosmos, but expressions of it, just as comets and galaxies and stars are. To listen is to hear the unity in it all, the harmony that binds silence and meaning together. As we look ahead, we know that more visitors will come, more comets, more asteroids, perhaps more interstellar travelers. Each one will bring a chance to listen, to read the silent language again. Each one will carry both answers and questions, both clarity and mystery, and with each we will grow more fluent, more able to hear the subtle speech of the universe. Whether or not we ever confirm the presence of alien probes, the act of listening will remain valuable. It will shape us into a species more patient, more attentive, more humble before the vast silence in which we live. In this way, the silent language is not only about others, it is about us. It teaches us who we are when we listen, who we become when we wonder, who we might grow into when we accept that not all messages come with noise. Silence is enough. Patterns are enough. Wonder is enough. The probes, the comets, the visitors, they are all part of the same lesson. The universe is speaking. The question is, are we ready to hear? The silent language of alien probes reaches its soft conclusion not with proof, but with reflection. To stand under the night sky after Atlas, after Oumuamua, after countless comets, is to realize that silence itself is a dialogue. We ask questions in the form of telescopes, equations, models. The universe responds in the form of faint glimmers, curious orbits, unexpected breakups, subtle accelerations. The exchange is not loud. It does not rush. It unfolds across centuries, across civilizations, across stars. In this silence, we begin to sense that communication is broader than we imagined, that it includes every gesture of the cosmos, whether made by nature or by intention. If there are probes among the stars, hidden in the guise of comets or drifting in shadows, their language may not be directed only at us. Perhaps it is a language that belongs to the universe itself, a way for intelligence to harmonize with nature. By making a probe look like a comet, another civilization might not be hiding, but blending, respecting the continuity of creation. To us, this is a mystery. To them, perhaps, it is obvious. Their silent language may be one of belonging, of saying we are part of this cosmos, not apart from it. Our instruments and your comets are kin. Our presence does not disturb. We move with the same rhythm as the stars. Silence is not emptiness. It is a fullness we cannot always pass. The silence of Atlas breaking apart was filled with data, with insights about fragility and structure, about how ice and dust can carry memory for billions of years. The silence of Oumuamua's strange acceleration was filled with wonder, with the urge to rethink, to question, to not dismiss the unusual. The silence of other comets carries the rhythms of our own origins, whispering of water delivered to Earth, of organic seeded into oceans, of the first steps toward life. To hear this silence is to hear the story of existence itself, a story that does not need words to be understood. And what of us? What language do we speak to the cosmos? We send out radio waves, bursts of information, signals that fade into static as they travel. We launch probes with plaques and records carrying greetings in human languages. Yet perhaps the truest language we speak is not in broadcasts, but in the quiet fact of our presence. Our planet glows with oxygen and methane, with the shimmer of cities, with the pulse of communication. These are not words, but they are signals nonetheless. To another intelligence, our silence may already be eloquent. We are speaking even when we do not mean to. We are part of the dialogue, whether we know it or not. The idea that silence itself is communication reshapes how we see ourselves. It suggests that we are never outside the conversation of the universe. Every orbit, every breath, every radio hum is part of the dialogue. If probes drift among us, silent and disguised, they too are listening to this. They may not need to speak loudly because we are already speaking in ways we cannot help. Our atmosphere, our signals, our movements, they are all parts of our silent message. In this sense, Atlas and other comets are not only messages to us but mirrors, showing us that we too are messengers, part of the language of the cosmos. The silent language is also a reminder of humility. We do not know everything. We may never know everything. But not knowing is not failure. It is invitation. The silence of the universe does not mock us. It waits for us. It teaches us to grow slowly, to earn understanding through patience. When Atlas broke apart, we did not gain certainty. We gained more questions. And that too is communication. To be given more questions is to be drawn deeper into the dialogue. To live with questions is to live within the language of silence. Now imagine the long future, 1,000 years from now, when humanity has travelled farther, when our probes drift among other stars. Perhaps we too will learn to speak the silent language. Perhaps we will disguise our instruments as comets, sending them quietly into other systems, letting them blend, letting them observe without intrusion. Perhaps we will learn that the truest communication is not in declaring ourselves, but in harmonizing, in moving with the rhythm of the cosmos rather than against it. If so, then what we imagine as alien probes today may be a glimpse of our own future, a mirror held up by time. Silence has always been with us. It is in the pauses between heartbeats, in the space between words, in the stillness of a starry night. To recognize silence as language is to realize that we have always been listening, always been part of the conversation. The comets, the asteroids, the visitors from other systems, they remind us that meaning does not require sound. Meaning is present in motion, in presence, in fragility, in persistence. The silent language tells us, you are not alone. You are part of a greater whole. You belong. As the story of Atlas and Oumuamua and all other visitors fades into memory, the silence remains. It is the silence of the universe, vast and patient, waiting for us to listen more deeply. It is the silence of probes, whether natural or intentional, carrying their messages not in words but in being. It is the silence that tells us to wonder, to wait, to learn. And in that silence we find peace, we find belonging, we find the gentle assurance that the cosmos, though vast and strange, is also a place where questions are welcome, where curiosity is answered, not with noise but with whispers. The silent language of alien probes is not foreign. It is familiar. It is the same language the universe has always spoken, the same language our hearts already know. To listen to it is to become still, to open ourselves to mystery, to accept that sometimes the greatest conversations happen without a single word. In that stillness, we hear the message, you are part of the song, and the song is endless. Memory does not always belong to minds. It also belongs to matter, to the quiet archives written in dust and ice. to the frozen fragments that drift between stars. A comet is such an archive, a vessel that carries memory across billions of years, older than oceans, older than mountains, older even than the life that now looks up at it with wonder. When we speak of comets as carriers of memory, we are not speaking in metaphor alone. They hold the chemistry of creation itself, the very elements and molecules that seeded planets, that shaped atmospheres, that offered the first whispers of life. To look at a comet is to read the oldest diary of the cosmos, a diary written not with ink, but with frozen breath. Imagine Atlas again, not only as a visitor, not only as a question, but as a memory. Its ice contained water that had never flowed in rivers, never fallen as rain, never been warmed by the breath of living beings. Its dust contained carbon compounds untouched since the dawn of stars. Within its body were patterns, ratios, isotopes, tiny details that tell of the nursery where it was formed. These details are not guesses. They are measurable, recorded in the spectra of light that its gases released when warmed by the sun. Each spike of colour, each faint absorption, was a letter in the story of its memory. To study Atlas was to trace back not just its own path, but the path of the solar system, the path of matter itself, stretching into the deep past. Comets store memory in layers, much like the rings of trees or the strata of rocks. Over time, as they orbit, as they fracture, as they lose surface ice and reveal hidden depths, they reveal older and older chapters of their story. Some layers speak of the places where they formed, cold regions at the edge of the solar system. Others speak of collisions, of mixing, of journeys outward and inward. Each time sunlight touches them, part of the memory is released, a puff of gas that carries secrets into the void. Telescopes become readers, instruments become translators, and humans become listeners to a language older than words. But memory is not only about the past, it is also about continuity, about carrying something forward. When comets strike planets, they deliver water and organics. They bring the ingredients of life. If Earth received some of its water from comets, then every ocean wave, every cloud, every raindrop is a continuation of comet memory. When you drink water, you may be drinking molecules that once slept in a comet's frozen heart. When life first stirred on this planet, perhaps it stirred with comet-born molecules, amino acids carried across space to seed the oceans. In this way, comets carry memory not only of their own beginnings, but of ours as well. The memory they carry is also a reminder of fragility. Atlas broke apart and in doing so scattered its memory into fragments too faint to follow. Yet even in breaking it spoke. Its memory was not lost, it was shared. Fragments drifted, light curves changed, data flowed, and in that flow scientists pieced together new understanding. Memory is not always preserved intact. Sometimes it survives in echoes, in scattered pieces, in faint trails of dust. Yet those echoes are enough. They tell us what we need to know if only we are patient enough to listen. To think of comets as carriers of memory is also to think of ourselves. We are, in a way, living comets. Our bodies carry the memory of stars, the carbon forged in their burning hearts, the oxygen made in their fusion, the iron that once shone in supernovae. Our DNA carries memory of ancestors stretching back through time, each strand a record of survival, adaptation, change. We are memory in motion, just as comets are. The difference is that we can reflect on it, can tell stories, can recognize the kinship. To see a comet is to see ourselves reflected, not as fragile beings adrift, but as beings who, like comets, carry the past forward into the future. Some scientists wonder whether comets might also carry living memory, not just chemistry, but microbes, spores, or fragments of biology. The idea of panspermia, life carried from world to world by comets, remains speculative, but it is not impossible. If true, then comets may be the couriers of life itself, bearing memory across light years, scattering it like seeds into fertile ground. Perhaps our own life began in this way. Perhaps life elsewhere begins the same. If so, then comets are not only archives but gardeners, tending the universe with patience beyond imagination. The memory of comets is also poetic. For centuries, humans have watched them with awe and fear. They were once seen as omens, heralds of change, symbols of fate. Those interpretations were not scientific, but they too were memory. Cultural memory written in myths, in paintings, in poems. When we see Atlas or Oumuamua or any comet, we are also seeing the memory of our ancestors' wonder. Their eyes widened as ours do. Their hearts stirred as ours do. The memory is continuous. Not just in the ice and dust, but in the human gaze itself. To stand under the stars and watch a comet is to feel the weight of this memory. It is to sense the billions of years that shaped it, the billions of lives that have wondered about it, the billions of possibilities it carries. It is to feel small, but not in despair. Small in belonging, small in connection, small in the way a drop of water belongs to the ocean. The comet's memory becomes our memory. Its journey becomes our story, and in that recognition we find comfort. We are not alone in time, we are carried forward with the comets, just as they carry forward the whispers of the cosmos. Now imagine Atlas drifting away, its fragments scattering into the deep night. Its memory is no longer visible, yet it continues. The dust will orbit for centuries, perhaps millennia, crossing paths with planets, falling into atmospheres, burning as meteors, sinking into oceans. Each piece will continue the story. Each piece will carry memory to new places. Atlas may be gone, but its memory will outlast it. And so it is with all comets. Their physical forms are temporary, fragile, but their memory is vast, enduring, woven into the fabric of space and time. To know this is to see comets not as fleeting visitors, but as librarians of the cosmos, keepers of stories that stretch beyond our imagination. The memory held by comets deepens when we think not only of their chemistry, but of the journeys they make. Each orbit is a line drawn through time, each path a story carried from one age to another. A comet spends most of its life in silence, drifting unseen in the outer darkness of the solar system or between the stars, holding its secrets in stillness. Then, pulled inward by gravity, it begins to speak, not in sound but in vapour and light. Its ices sublimate, its dust streams outward, its faint glow becomes a visible voice. For a brief time it writes its memory across the sky, and then it fades again, retreating into quiet. This rhythm is the rhythm of memory itself. Periods of dormancy, followed by revelation, followed again by silence. When we study comets, we are listening to this rhythm. Instruments capture the brightness, the spectra, the tails. Computers model the trajectories, the disintegration, the jets of gas. Each measurement is like a word, and when strung together they form sentences. The sentences become chapters, and in time the chapters form a book of memory. Each comet is its own volume, unique, telling a slightly different story of chemistry, of origin, of journey. Together, the Library of Comets tells the story of the solar system's beginning, of the processes that built planets and oceans, of the scattering of water and organics across space. This is not metaphor alone. It is real memory, encoded in matter, waiting to be read. Consider how fragile this memory is. A comet like Atlas carried billions of years of history in its frozen layers, yet a few weeks of sunlight were enough to unravel it. Its breakup was not only a physical event, it was a reminder of impermanence. Memory is always at risk of loss, whether in ice, in stone, or in human minds. Yet loss is not the end. The fragments of Atlas still carried memory. The data collected during its disintegration still told us its story. Even in scattering, memory endures. This is a profound lesson. Memory may change form, but it does not disappear. It becomes dust, light, reflection, record. It becomes part of the larger flow of knowledge. Some comets travel so far that they become interstellar, leaving the family of the Sun and drifting into the galaxy. These carry memory not only of our system, but of others, for the materials that shape them may have been influenced by stars beyond our reach. Oumuamua was such a visitor, and its memory was strange, unfamiliar, unlike anything we had seen before. Its silence was filled with questions. What star system gave it birth? What processes shaped its elongated form? Was it purely natural, or did its memory include the touch of intention? We may never know for certain, yet its presence reminded us that the galaxy itself is a web of memory, that fragments travel between stars, carrying whispers of distant places. Each interstellar visitor is a page torn from another library, arriving unexpectedly in our hands. Memory too is about continuity across scales. A comet holds molecular memory, but also cosmic memory. Its water tells us about the conditions in the protoplanetary disk where it formed. Its dust grains tell us about supernovae that exploded long before our sun was born. Its organic molecules tell us about chemistry that thrives even in cold darkness. To read a comet is to read not only the story of our solar system, but the story of stars that lived and died before it. In this way, comets are more than archives. They are bridges between generations of stars, between epochs of creation. They carry memory across time so vast that our own history seems like a blink. The memory carried by comets is also practical. By studying them, we learn about resources that may one day sustain us as we travel outward. Their water could become our drinking water, their hydrogen our fuel, their carbon our building material. In this way, comets are not only librarians of the past, but potential providers for the future. They carry the memory of life's beginnings, but they may also support life's continuation. To see them this way is to see memory not as passive but as active, shaping what is yet to come, and yet memory is also intimate. To watch a comet from Earth, to stand beneath a night sky and see its faint glow, is to feel personally connected to something unimaginably old. You know that what you are seeing is billions of years in the making. You know that it carries within it the very water and carbon that make you possible. You feel the thread of memory stretching from distant stars through the comet to your own body. In that moment, memory is not abstract, it is alive. It is breathing in you just as it breathes in the comet's tail. The cultural memory of comets is equally rich. For thousands of years, people have told stories about them. They were omens, portents, messengers of the gods. They appeared suddenly and disappeared just as suddenly, and in that unpredictability, they seemed to hold power. Ancient cultures wove them into myths, painted them on cave walls, carved them into records. Those stories are part of humanity's own memory, showing how we once tried to understand the unknown. Today we know more scientifically, but the awe remains. We still tell stories, we still feel the stirring of mystery. Our memory and the comet's memory are now intertwined, each giving meaning to the other. Atlas, in particular, reminded us that memory can be fragile and fleeting. It promised brightness, then broke apart before reaching its full glory. Yet in doing so, it gave us more data than we expected, more insight into the nature of cometary structure. Its memory was revealed precisely because of its failure. This is a lesson for us as well. Our own memories, fragile and imperfect, can still reveal truth even in loss. Forgetting, breaking, scattering, these are not the end. They are part of the process by which memory transforms, by which it continues in new forms. Now imagine again the dust of comets falling into Earth's skies as meteors. Each streak of light is a fragment of memory burning in our atmosphere. For a brief moment it glows, and then it is gone, but its story is not lost. It has entered our air, our oceans, our soil. It has entered our memory. The sky itself becomes a book, and the meteors are its fleeting words written in fire. We read them with our eyes, we feel them with our hearts, we carry them in our stories. In this way, cometary memory becomes human memory, shared across generations. Comets are not only carriers of their own past, but of possibility. They remind us that the universe is not static, that memory itself is dynamic, always moving, always transforming. They tell us that life may not be confined to one world, that seeds may drift across light years, that memory may be scattered widely and bloom in unexpected places. They teach us that we too are carriers of memory, not just of our own lives, but of the cosmos itself. When we look at a comet, we are reminded that memory is not something we hold alone. It is something we share, something we inherit, something we pass on. In the end, comets as carriers of memory remind us that the universe is full of stories, waiting patiently for us to listen. The stories are not written in words, but in water, dust, and light. They are not loud, but quiet, not fleeting, but enduring. Atlas was one such story. It came, it brightened, it broke, and it left behind memory scattered in fragments. We are still reading those fragments, still piecing together their meaning. And as we do, we realize that our own story is part of theirs, that we too are fragments in the great memory of the cosmos, glowing briefly, then scattering, then continuing in ways we cannot yet see. Comets as carriers of memory bring us now to the closing reflection, where the story softens into stillness and the lessons settle gently like snow. Memory, after all, is not only about the past, it is about the way the past continues into the present and the way it shapes the future. When we think of Atlas, when we think of Oumuamua, when we think of the countless other comets that have come and gone, we begin to see the sky itself as a vast memory, an archive without walls, where every traveller is a record and every streak of light a recollection. To walk beneath the stars is to walk within this living memory, and to notice it is to feel connected to something immeasurably larger than ourselves. The memory of comets is not neat. It does not arrive as a polished book. It arrives fragmented, scattered, faint, It arrives in broken pieces, in fading tales, in spectra that must be interpreted with care. Yet this is also the way human memory works. We do not recall perfectly. We remember in fragments, in glimpses, in echoes. We reconstruct the past from scattered pieces. Comets, in their way, mirror this process. Their memory is honest in its imperfection, and in that honesty, it becomes more relatable, more human. To see Atlas break apart was to see a mirror of our own fragile hold on memory, and to realize that even brokenness carries meaning. Consider how comets deliver their memory. They carry it silently for eons, then release it suddenly when warmed by sunlight. In this release, they share their story, but only briefly, only partially before retreating again into the dark. Memory too is like this. We hold it silently, then something triggers its release, a sound, a scent, a glimpse of light, and suddenly the past blooms again, vivid and immediate. Then just as quickly it fades. To watch a comet is to watch memory itself in action, vast and ancient, yet fleeting and fragile in its expression. The parallel is gentle but profound. Atlas reminded us that memory is not about permanence, it is about continuity. Even as it dissolved, its dust joined the solar system, its fragments became part of the interplanetary medium, its data entered our archives, its story entered our imagination. Memory does not need to remain whole to endure. It endures in transformation, in echoes, in traces. When a meteor streaks across the sky, we see a fragment of cometary memory burning into brilliance for a moment. That moment may be short, but the memory continues in us, carried in our wonder, in our telling of the story. Memory survives not because it resists change, but because it embraces it. There is also a lesson in how comets carry memory across distances. They travel for billions of kilometers, across centuries, across star systems. They remind us that memory is not confined. It can travel far, cross boundaries, endure distances that seem impossible. Perhaps this is why comets stir such awe in us. They embody the persistence of story, the resilience of memory. If life itself is ever scattered by comets, then memory is not just chemical but biological. It becomes living, breathing, self-replicating. It becomes something that grows, adapts, and continues, no matter where it lands. In this way, comets may be gardeners of memory, planting it in new soils, letting it take root in worlds beyond our own. The cultural memory of comets is equally important. They have been recorded in chronicles, painted on tapestries, woven into myths. Ancient people saw them as harbingers of change, and in a sense, they were right. Every comet is a reminder of change, of impermanence, of cycles that stretch beyond human lifetimes. Today we know more scientifically, but the cultural memory persists. Comets remain symbols of mystery, of beauty, of fragility. They remind us that knowledge and wonder are not separate but intertwined. To see a comet is to join with ancestors who once looked up in the same awe, to share a memory that stretches across generations. Atlas's story is now part of this memory. Though its glow has faded, though its fragments are gone from sight, its memory continues in research papers, in photographs, in data sets. It continues in the quiet thrill of those who watched it. It continues in the poetic reflections it inspired, in the metaphors of fragility and endurance. And it continues in us, in the way we now look at comets differently, with more patience, more tenderness, more awareness that they are not just icy rocks but carriers of something precious. Memory is not lost when the object is gone. Memory is carried forward by those who remember, by those who listen. To see comets as carriers of memory is to see the universe as a place that does not forget. Every star, every planet, every fragment holds the record of its journey. Nothing is wasted, nothing is meaningless, all is preserved. If not in the same form, then in echoes, in patterns, in consequences. Atlas has joined this vast continuity, just as we will one day. We too are carriers of memory, of stardust and stories, of laughter and tears, of questions and hopes. We too will scatter, and yet our memory will endure, in fragments, in echoes, in the transformations that follow. Now imagine a future when humans travel among the stars, when we encounter comets in other systems. We will study them as we study Atlas and Oumuamua, and in them we will find memory again. Perhaps we will even find traces of life, traces of stories older than our own, memories carried across light years by fragile fragments of ice. To touch such memory will be to touch kinship, to realize that life itself is a form of memory, and that memory is the most universal language of all. In the end, comets as carriers of memory remind us that we are not separate from the cosmos. We are part of its memory, and it is part of ours. Every time we look up at the sky, we are remembering. Every time we wonder, we are carrying memory forward. Atlas may be gone, but its memory is alive in us, alive in the sky, alive in the endless flow of matter and story. The carriers of memory will continue to pass by, and we will continue to listen. And in that listening, we will remember that to be alive is to carry memory, to share it, to become part of the great archive of existence. High above the world, the night stretches endlessly, a tapestry stitched from pinpricks of light, each star whispering its own quiet story. Imagine standing beneath this expanse, the cool air settling softly around your shoulders, your eyes lifting slowly as if the sky itself might lean closer to share a secret. The stars are not simply points of light, but ancient witnesses to cosmic events, vast distances folded into luminous specks that travel across time to reach us. Each flicker is a message encoded in light, a record of energies released countless years ago, and as we gaze, we begin to feel a subtle connection, a sense that the universe remembers, even as we ourselves seek to remember. You can almost hear the hum of the cosmos, a faint vibration beneath the quiet, resonating with the rhythm of planets, moons, and comets drifting in their eternal dance. There is a patience in this rhythm, a gentleness that asks us to slow down, to notice the small glimmers, and to wonder what questions they carry across the void. The constellations appear familiar, yet they are more than the outlines drawn by our ancestors. They are part of a deeper structure, celestial patterns that guide explorers, scientists, and dreamers alike. Our ancestors wove stories into these constellations, connecting stars with lines drawn in imagination, tracing myths across the night sky. These stories were early attempts to translate cosmic mysteries into meaning, to capture memory and curiosity in a form that could be shared. But the universe itself has no need for stories. It simply exists, vast and unhurried. And yet, our stories bridge the gap between human understanding and the infinite, whispering questions about existence, about the beginning of time, about what lies beyond our gaze. These questions, carried softly in thought and dream, reflect a kind of intimacy with the stars, as if in asking we invite them to answer, to reveal something we cannot yet name, something that vibrates just beyond perception, where curiosity touches awe. Beyond our small glowing blue planet, light travels across unimaginable distances, carrying information that predates the Earth itself. When we watch the night sky, we are looking back through time, seeing stars that may no longer exist in the form we perceive, yet whose photons continue to reach us, like letters cast into a vast mailbox that spans centuries. In this sense, the universe is an archive of questions, each beam of light a query that waits to be interpreted. Astronomers use delicate instruments to measure these lights, to analyze spectra and shifts, to understand compositions and motions, yet even the most precise measurement cannot fully capture the essence of the stars. There is always a poetic margin, a space where science and imagination meet, where we can sense the hidden questions that might exist between the atoms and photons, questions about what it means to persist, to shine, to travel endlessly without knowing who will witness. This margin invites us to wonder gently and persistently, to allow the mind to drift among possibilities as delicate as starlight itself. Imagine now that each star is a question waiting to be answered, some simple and immediate, others layered with complexity that spans eons. These questions are encoded in light and motion, in gravity and magnetism, in nuclear reactions that hum quietly for billions of years. Even the nearest star, a warm companion to our sun, holds mysteries we can barely begin to decipher. Hidden planets, magnetic storms, subtle oscillations in brightness. The universe in its silent expanse invites us to notice these subtleties, to engage in a gentle dialogue where curiosity itself is a form of listening. We learn to read not only the light that reaches us, but also the spaces between, the dark stretches that give context to brilliance, the voids that allow patterns to emerge. In these quiet spaces, the universe asks its questions more subtly, in rhythms and intervals, and we respond with the slow, patient observation that science demands, always tempered with the humility that we are small yet deeply connected observers. Galaxies spiral in the distance, their arms stretching outward like fingers reaching across the dark, each star a node in an intricate network of matter and energy. Within these grand structures, countless systems host planets and moons, some harboring conditions that might support our life, some entirely alien to anything we know. Even the lifeless landscapes contribute to the cosmic narrative, as if every object participates in a quiet conversation about possibility and existence. The patterns of their motion, the distribution of elements, the collisions and mergers of galaxies all tell us subtle truths about the universe's history and future. When we study them, we begin to perceive a rhythm to cosmic evolution, a gentle unfolding that is both scientific and deeply poetic. The universe is not hasty. It does not demand immediate comprehension. Its questions linger, echoing softly across millennia, inviting reflection and contemplation rather than urgency. In this patient unfolding, we find space to breathe, to wonder, and to recognize the intimacy of our own curiosity mirrored in the stars. Now consider the space between stars, a quiet darkness filled with invisible forces, with particles and fields that shape the movement of matter without ever calling attention to themselves. This darkness is as vital to understanding the cosmos as the brilliance of stars, for it holds the mechanisms that guide formation, collapse, and creation. Dark matter, cosmic radiation, interstellar gas and dust, they all interact in ways subtle and profound, forming the stage upon which luminous actors perform. In a sense, the universe is asking us to notice the hidden, to value the unseen, to acknowledge that the most profound answers may dwell in places where light does not reach. These quiet forces remind us that observation is a form of mindfulness, a slow and attentive practice where every discovery, no matter how small, contributes to a greater understanding, like drops of memory accumulating in a vast reservoir. Here, the universe is teaching patience, showing that questions need time to unfold, and that understanding grows when we are willing to linger, to watch, and to let imagination move gently alongside reason. We can drift now toward the smallest scales, imagining atoms and molecules that form the very air we breathe and the starlight we perceive. Even at this scale, questions abound. How did matter organize into complexity? How did simple elements give rise to stars, planets, oceans, life? These microcosmic mysteries mirror the grand scale, as if the universe repeats its questions at every level. Electrons orbit nuclei like tiny satellites. Atoms bond into molecules, molecules into structures that allow life to emerge. The rhythm of this microcosm echoes the macrocosm, suggesting that curiosity itself is a fundamental property of the universe, a persistent pattern that bridges the vast and the minute. As we contemplate these scales, we sense that the questions hidden in the stars are mirrored within us, in our own structures, in the movement of thought and memory, in the patterns that emerge when neurons fire and ideas take shape. The stars and we are intertwined in a quiet, enduring dialogue, each observing and responding in our own ways. As the night deepens, imagine drifting among the stars, guided by questions rather than answers. Perhaps one star asks, silently, about the nature of consciousness, about the possibility of life elsewhere, about the fleeting nature of our own existence. Another star might pose questions about formation, collapse, and transformation, about the cycles that stretch across billions of years. In listening, we do not need to grasp every answer. The act of attention itself is a form of communion, a way to participate in the cosmic story without haste or expectation. We learn to notice subtle changes, the shifting brightness of a distant sun, the gentle drift of a nebula, the soft resonance of gravitational waves. Each observation is a response, a note in the conversation that spans time and space. Here, science becomes a meditation, curiosity a form of presence, and questions hidden in the stars become companions in the quiet journey of understanding. Finally, consider that some questions may never be fully answered. This is not failure, but the natural rhythm of cosmic inquiry. Just as a melody is enhanced by pauses and silences, the universe's questions gain meaning in the intervals we cannot immediately comprehend. The stars invite us to linger in wonder, to appreciate the elegance of questions themselves, to recognize that curiosity is as valuable as resolution. In this gentle rhythm, the universe offers a lesson: to carry questions softly, to let them illuminate our minds without urgency, and to allow our imagination to wander freely alongside scientific thought. Each star, each flicker of light becomes an emblem of this patient dialogue, a reminder that the act of questioning is itself a form of presence, an invitation to participate in the enduring memory of the cosmos. And as we breathe under the quiet sky, we realize that we are not simply observers. We are participants, listening to the questions hidden in the stars, carrying them forward with care, and allowing them to shape the way we move, think, and dream. Let us drift deeper into the universe, into the gentle corridors of space where galaxies whisper to one another across vast distances, carrying the echoes of time like a soft melody. Imagine the spirals of stars, each arm a delicate brushstroke of light, turning slowly in the cosmic rhythm. Within these galaxies, clusters of stars gather like quiet villages, each one a potential host for worlds unknown, each planet orbiting in patient circles as if counting the moments until we notice them. Some of these worlds may be barren, dusted in silence, while others could harbour hidden waters, gentle winds, or unseen life. The universe, in its unhurried way, seems to cradle these possibilities, offering them for contemplation rather than demand. When we observe, we are invited to participate in the patient unfolding of existence, to sense the hidden harmonies that resonate between stars and the emptiness that surrounds them. In this space, questions emerge softly. What does it mean for life to arise, for matter to organize, for consciousness to shimmer briefly before fading? Each question is a note in a symphony that stretches across eons, and we are listeners, attuned to its quiet intricacies. We can follow now the paths of light, moving through the interstellar medium, drifting between dust and gas that silently shape the formation of stars. Nebulae stretch like clouds of watercolour tinted with the soft reds, blues and golds of ionized elements, forming luminous shadows that glow in gentle defiance of the surrounding darkness. Within these clouds, gravity gathers particles together in slow, patient dances, collapsing to birth new stars in quiet bursts of nuclear energy. The process is both scientific and deeply poetic. Atoms meet, fuse, release energy, and in doing so create the conditions for planets, oceans, and perhaps even life. We can almost sense the hidden question in this process. How does simplicity give rise to complexity? How does chaos fold into order over unimaginable spans of time? The nebula answers only in the language of persistence, of subtle motion and quiet reaction, inviting us to understand not only with instruments, but with a sense of awe that recognizes the rhythm of creation. Now consider the journey of a single photon released from the heart of a newborn star. It travels for thousands, even millions of years, moving through the void, sometimes scattered, sometimes absorbed, before finally reaching a telescope or a human eye. This tiny particle carries with it the story of nuclear reactions, of the elemental forces that shape the star and will eventually shape other worlds. Each photon is a messenger, a gentle question arriving from afar, asking indirectly about its own origins and the vast processes that allowed it to exist. When it finally reaches us, it illuminates a small portion of our understanding, a sliver of cosmic truth. And yet for all the science we apply, for all the instruments we build to capture and analyse light, the universe maintains a quiet mystery, a reminder that knowledge and wonder are intertwined. The photon's journey is long, patient and unhurried, and in observing it, we learn patience as well, and a deeper appreciation for the subtleties of cosmic time. Within these spirals and clouds, consider the formation of planetary systems, where dust and rock collide gently, eventually forming spheres that cradle potential life. The planets orbit in slow measured paths governed by the invisible hand of gravity, following patterns that balance chaos and order. Some worlds may be small and rocky, others vast and gaseous, but all participate in the universal dance. Comets, asteroids, and minor bodies wander through these systems like curious wanderers, carrying with them frozen histories, ancient water, and perhaps even prebiotic molecules. Each orbit, each collision, each subtle gravitational tug is a quiet question. What is the potential hidden in these motions? What stories lie waiting to be revealed? The universe whispers through these motions, and in listening we can begin to perceive the poetry of mechanics, the elegance of forces that have sculpted planets and moons with patient care. In this understanding, science and imagination merge, allowing us to perceive the cosmic question hidden in every orbit and the gentle persistence of matter of billions of years. Drifting further, we encounter the subtle interplay of time and space, a gentle bending that allows stars and planets to move gracefully along their paths. Einstein's insight reminds us that the universe is flexible, that mass curves space, and that light itself follows these soft contours. Imagine bending a sheet of silk, watching it ripple gently under weight, and knowing that every star, every planet, every photon follows these contours in perfect patience. Even light bends, moving along these gentle arcs, carrying information and questions across the cosmos. Time too is not uniform. It stretches and compresses, folds and flows, creating experiences unique to each observer. In this space, the universe seems to pose its most profound question. How do we, bound by our own perception of time, grasp the true nature of a reality that flows differently in distant realms? It is a question that invites reflection, a meditative inquiry into the nature of existence as we watch the slow, graceful ballet of cosmic bodies and feel our own heartbeat synchronized ever so slightly with their quiet rhythm. Consider now the hidden energy that permeates the cosmos, the dark matter and dark energy that guide motions imperceptible to ordinary senses, shaping the universe's evolution with gentle insistence. Though invisible, their presence is felt in the curvature of galaxies, in the accelerated expansion of space, in the subtle shifts that can be measured over centuries. These invisible forces remind us that not all questions have visible answers, that understanding often requires patience, subtlety, and imagination. Like a soft wind that shapes dunes without being seen, these forces guide the formation of structures, the orbits of stars, and the growth of clusters. In observing their effects, we participate in a quiet dialogue with the cosmos, learning to interpret the invisible through its manifestations. The universe, in this way, teaches us humility, reminding us that we are not only discoverers but listeners, that the questions hidden in the stars may exist in realms we cannot see, and yet we can sense them in their gentle influence. Returning now to the stars themselves, consider the lives they lead, igniting in brilliant fusion, releasing energy, and eventually fading in calm or spectacular endings. Some stars end their lives with soft, gentle cooling into white dwarfs, whispering their remaining energy into the cosmos. Others explode as supernovae, sending matter and radiation outward, seeding new generations of stars and planets. These cycles are slow, enduring, and intimate in their way, demonstrating that creation and transformation are inseparable. Each stage carries questions about impermanence, renewal, and the transfer of energy across time and space. In observing them, we witness processes that extend beyond human lifetimes, reminding us of the universe's patient rhythm. Stars ask, without words, about the persistence of matter, the continuity of cycles, and our own place within these grand transformations. Our role is to notice, to contemplate, and to allow our imagination to wander alongside these quiet cosmic processes. Finally, as we drift through this section of the story, we recognize that every star, every planet, every subtle force carries questions that may never be fully answered. Yet their presence invites meditation, reflection, and gentle inquiry. The universe is both teacher and companion, offering mysteries to explore with patience and care. By observing the slow unfolding of celestial events, by tracing light and motion, by listening to the hidden currents that shape matter and energy, we participate in a cosmic conversation that transcends time. These questions, hidden in the stars and whispered across distances, become companions in our contemplation, guiding us toward understanding, not as a destination but as a gentle journey. In this quiet reflection, we find a harmony between science and poetry, curiosity and patience, observation and imagination, carrying forward the soft questions that the cosmos entrusts to those who linger beneath the night sky. Now, as we draw closer to the final reflections of this cosmic journey, let us pause and sense the delicate threads that connect everything in the universe, from the tiniest particles to the largest galaxies. Imagine the interwoven fabric of existence, each thread vibrating with subtle energy, resonating with patterns that are at once scientific and poetic. The paths of stars, the orbits of planets, the flow of photons across unimaginable distances, all compose a gentle symphony, one that hums softly beneath the surface of what we can measure. These threads are not rigid, they sway, bend, and ripple, influenced by gravity, dark matter, and the quiet persistence of time. As we trace their movement, we sense that the universe is not merely a backdrop for events, but an active participant, a patient orchestrator whose questions are encoded in the very motion of matter and energy. Consider the slow march of cosmic history, the epochs that stretch across billions of years, in which galaxies collide, stars are born and die, and planets form and evolve. Time in the universe is not hurried. It flows with gentle inevitability, allowing processes to unfold with perfect patience. Each moment in cosmic history is connected to those that came before and those that will follow, creating continuity and coherence in the vast tapestry of existence. Within this continuum, life emerges as one small, fragile expression of the universe's tendency toward organization, adaptation, and resilience. The chemistry of life is itself a story of patient evolution, of molecules finding stable patterns, of energy being harnessed in quiet, persistent ways. Life is not separate from the cosmos. It is a reflection of its rhythms, a soft echo of processes that have shaped matter across eons. We can almost feel the whisper of these epochs as we observe the night sky, sensing the slow pulse of creation beneath the twinkle of stars. As we continue, let us focus on the subtle interplay between order and chaos, a dance that governs every corner of the universe. Stars form from collapsing clouds of gas and dust, galaxies swirl in elegant spirals, and planets find their orbits, all arising from the delicate balance of forces that simultaneously push, pull, and guide matter. Within these processes, randomness and probability are not enemies of order, but partners in creation. Tiny fluctuations, small differences in density or temperature, amplify over time, shaping the structures we observe today. This delicate dance is mirrored in ecosystems, in the flow of rivers, in the branching of trees, and in the intricate wiring of the brain. Patterns emerge slowly, gently, in ways that seem predetermined yet retain a sense of surprise. By observing these processes, we understand that the universe is a master of patience, crafting complexity through countless small persistent interactions. Now imagine the quiet life of a planet orbiting its star, a world bathed in soft light, its atmosphere flowing gently, its oceans moving in unseen rhythms. The cycles of day and night, the changing of seasons, the slow weathering of mountains, all occur with patient consistency. Life, if present, participates in these cycles with equal subtlety, adapting, responding, and thriving within the framework of environmental forces. Even the tiniest organisms contribute to the unfolding story, shaping and reshaping the world in ways that are profound yet often invisible. Each heartbeat, each photosynthetic reaction, each chemical transformation is a note in a symphony of existence that mirrors the larger cosmic rhythms. Here at the planetary scale, we can sense the resonance between microcosm and macrocosm, a reflection of the universe's persistent elegance in the dance of matter and energy. Consider also the delicate threads that connect life to the larger cosmos, such as the elements forged in distant stars and delivered to worlds through cosmic winds, supernovae, and meteorites. These elements form the building blocks of planets, oceans, and organisms, linking every atom in our bodies to the distant, patient history of the universe. We are, in a very literal sense, composed of stardust, a connection that invites awe and reflection. Each breath we take, each movement we make, is part of a continuum that began in the hearts of stars long before Earth existed. The chemistry of life is thus a bridge between the microscopic and the cosmic, a reminder that our existence is inseparable from the processes that govern the universe. In recognizing this, we are invited to live with a sense of wonder, awareness, and gratitude, attuned to the soft pulse of creation that flows through all things. As we approach the conclusion of this story, let us reflect on the gentle interplay of light, time, and energy that shapes our understanding of the cosmos. Photons traveling for millions of years carry stories from distant stars. Gravitational waves ripple through space-time, whispering of cosmic events we can only begin to perceive, and dark matter silently guides the motion of galaxies in ways that remain largely hidden. Each of these phenomena is a question, an invitation to explore, to wonder, and to imagine. They teach us patience, showing that understanding often requires waiting, observing, and listening with care. Science, in this sense, is not only a pursuit of facts, but also a meditation, a quiet engagement with the rhythms of the universe, where each discovery deepens our appreciation for the vast, interconnected web of existence. Finally, we return to the quiet contemplation of our place within the cosmos. From the smallest subatomic particles to the largest cosmic structures, from the fleeting life of a single star to the long sweep of the galactic evolution, the universe offers a continuous invitation to wonder. We are both observers and participants, our consciousness shaped by the very processes we seek to understand. The cosmos does not demand answers, but encourages questions. Not only about what exists, but about how and why it flows with such gentle inevitability. In this reflection, we find peace, a sense of connection, and an understanding that our curiosity is itself part of the universe's rhythm. By observing, imagining and feeling, we participate in a quiet dialogue that stretches across time and space, a conversation without end that continues in every pulse of light, every orbiting planet, and every whisper of cosmic energy. As we close this final section, the story lingers like the afterglow of a star, a soft illumination that continues to resonate within us. The universe, in its patient unfolding, has shared its quiet questions, its subtle rhythms, and its gentle mysteries. In listening, we've learned to notice not only the grandeur of galaxies, but also the intimacy of particles and photons, the elegance of planetary orbits, and the poetry hidden in the mechanics of life. The cosmos invites us to remain curious, patient, and reflective, to savor the gentle flow of existence, and to recognize that every moment, every observation, every breath is part of a larger, interconnected story. In this quiet awareness, we find not only understanding, but a profound sense of belonging, a recognition that we too are threads in the vast, patient tapestry of the universe, carrying forward its gentle, unhurried questions into the future.